Hey, what's going on, everybody? Commander Crane here, and we are back with another Pioneer deck tech. And today we're going to be talking about Blue-White God-Pharaoh's Gift. I'm very excited to bring this list to you. As always, before we hop into the video, let me know in the comment section below at the end of the video, what do you think about the list? Is there a card that I should have included? Just let me know below. And as well, if you have any suggestions for upcoming decks, whether or not, it's standard or Pioneer or Modern, just let me know in the comment section below. So, all right. Blue-White God-Pharaoh's Gift. So, huge shout out to Lagfest. Lagfest has been wanting a Reanimator deck for a while in Pioneer. And I've been thinking about how I wanted to do this Reanimator deck. I thought about doing like a traditional, like maybe like a Blood for Bones deck. But there's not a lot of good reanimation cards for the most part in Pioneer. And I got to thinking, like, what if I just did a God-Pharaoh's Gift deck? I've never done one before on the channel here. I kind of was trying to decide what colors I wanted to do, and I ultimately decided to do blue-white because there's some very, very sweet upgrades this deck has gotten since it was in standard like back in 2017, 2018. So let's go and hop into here. So obviously the namesake card, God-Pharaoh's Gift, 7 mana artifact. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may exile a creature card from your graveyard. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. It gains haste until end of turn. So we're not going to be casting this very often just because it is a 7 mana artifact. And these cards here are going to really help us get that card out. We're playing 4 Refurbish and 2 Abuelo's Awakening. It's actually a new card from Lost Caverns. So Refurbish, 4 mana, return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Just a really, really clean way to bring back the God-Pharaoh's Gift. And Abuelo's Awakening is, I would say, less good technically, but it's still an additional copy of Refurbish in a way. Return target artifact or non-aura enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield with X additional +1/+1 counters on it. It's a 1/1 spirit creature with flying in addition to its other types. So with the God-Pharaoh's Gift, if we bring it back for 4, it would come back as a 1/1 spirit with those abilities. So I would say Abuelo's Awakening is less good than God-Pharaoh's Gift just because it's easier to be removed, but it's still an additional copy of it, which is pretty sweet overall. So this is kind of the, I guess I should also mention this. I've been trying to do a lot of new brews with Lost Caverns or decks that get huge upgrades. This is kind of one of the last decks for the most part. I feel like I featured quite a few different Lost Caverns cards on here, and this was one of the few that I still think had a shot, and this was actually part of the big reason I ended up doing the God-Pharaoh's Gift was the Abuelo's Awakening, which we just got in the new set. So very, very cool overall. So, okay. So now we're trying to cheat our God-Pharaoh's Gift into play. What kind of creatures are we looking to bring back? Because there's a number of different creatures that realistically in a deck like this could be successful, and these are the creatures that I chose. I chose to play 4 Skyclave Apparition. It's just a really good removal spell on a creature. It helps in the early game before we get like our God-Pharaoh's Gift going, and late game obviously bringing it back as a 4/4 with that trigger ability is still very, very good. We're also playing 4 Agent of Treachery because guess what? Instead of exiling things, we'll just take it. We will just take their permanents, and it comes back as a 4/4, which is pretty sweet. So definitely a big fan of Agent of Treachery. Then we're also playing 3 Steel Seraph. The main reason I'm playing Steel Seraph is I was trying to decide what I wanted to play in this slot because, realistically, we could bring back like Cityscape Levelers or some really big artifacts. But I wanted to also play cards that we could reasonably cast for the most part, like Skyclave Apparition. So I decided to play Steel Seraph just because it's return an artifact card from the graveyard. So we can potentially bring this back, and we can either cast it for the prototype, like if we're just regularly casting it. But if we bring it back from the graveyard, it enters as the 5/4, which is pretty sweet. And it's just a pretty good body overall. I mean, 5/4, give a creature Flying Vigilance or Lifelink is pretty solid. So definitely a big fan of Steel Seraph in general. So these are kind of our main creatures that we want to bring back. But these cards is kind of what helps us also filter the graveyard, but also good creatures to bring back. We're playing 4 Champion of Wits. This card was one of the main ways to filter the graveyard back in the day, get the God-Pharaoh's Gifts in the graveyard, draw some cards, get those refurbishes, so that way we can go ahead and bring them right back and start doing some pretty cool things. The Eternalize, again, we'll do that sometimes if we have some late game, we're drawing a lot of cards, we're hitting our land drops, we'll be able to Eternalize relatively easy. And then still, even if we bring it back with the champion, it comes back as a 4/4, so we draw 4 and discard 2. So definitely a big fan of Champion of Wits. Waker Waves is also pretty sweet too, just because it puts a card into the graveyard. It's basically a 2-mana sleight of hand, and guess what? If we want to bring it back, giving our creatures our opponent's control -1/-0 is pretty sweet overall. So definitely a big fan of Waker Waves in general. It's just card draw, we discard it, late game we can go ahead and bring it back. So it's just a really sweet card overall. And then these cards is just our traditional draw, which kind of helps us filter our graveyard. We're playing 4 Considers. Obviously, Surveil 1, draw a card. Obviously, if we hit the God-Pharaoh's Gift, any creatures that we want to bring back with God-Pharaoh's Gift when it's eventually in play, we can go ahead and mill it and draw. It's just a really good card. And Faithful Mending, which is one of the other reasons I want it to be blue-white. It's an extremely good card. 2 mana, gain 2, draw 2, then discard 2, and flash it back. Just good against aggro, buys us some time, helps us stick for our combo, and discards our God-Pharaoh's Gift or our other creatures, so that way we can bring them back with God-Pharaoh's Gift. So it's just a very, very synergistic card in general. So that's our entire main board, but don't go anywhere. We still got to talk about our lands, our sideboard, as well as some budget options. So, lands is pretty self-explanatory for the most part. I decided to play 4 Temple of Enlightenment in this deck just because we're not trying to hit our curve right away. I think it's in this kind of deck, I think we could really take advantage of Temple of Enlightenment. It always feels good when you play it on turn 1. Our only 1-drop is Consider, which we're not trying to hit Consider on curve or anything like that. It's just a good draw spell. So definitely a big fan of Temple of Enlightenment. Then we're also playing 4 Hallowed Fountain and 4 Hengegate Pathways, our other good dual lands. We're also playing 4 Ipnu Rivulet. It's really good at putting cards in our graveyard. Obviously, we can tap 1 in a blue, sack a desert, and mill 4, which obviously it's target player, so we can mill ourselves. Again, just helps us put more creatures and the God-Pharaoh's Gifts into the graveyard. We're also playing 1 Agandra in Otawara, obviously just good flex lands to be playing in the deck. And then rounding out our lands, we're playing 2 Hall of Storm Giants, 2 Islands, and 1 Plains. And as our spicy basic land of the day, obviously I decided to pick the very cool Amonkhet Hour of Devastation ones, just because, it makes sense. We got some Amonkhet themes going because of God-Pharaoh's Gift, that kind of thing. And also, I feel like when people play this deck in Standard, I feel like they always played these lands against me. So, they're bringing back that God-Pharaoh's Gift, and they're just blowing me out by bringing other creatures back. So that's why I decided to pick those lands, which obviously I really, really like the art as well. So next thing we've got to talk about is our sideboard, which is pretty simple for the most part. Obviously, we're going to want some graveyard hate. I personally recommend cards like Tormod's Crypt or Soul Guide Lantern. Do not play Rest in Peace in this deck, though, just because Rest in Peace is symmetrical. And obviously, we're trying to fill up our graveyard, so we don't want to play Rest in Peace. I had to throw that in there. We're going to want some extra removal, as well as some counter spells. So cards like Portable Hole, is cards like... at least for extra removal, I would say Portable Hole is the best option. You could also play Get Lost. That's also a fantastic option. Counter spells, we're going to want cards like Dovin's Veto or Mystical Dispute. Kind of the main reason we want counter spells is because we want to protect our combo as well, because people are going to be trying to bring in like Abrades or, extra graveyard hate. So I would also recommend cards like Fragmentize, because Fragmentize, we're able to get rid of their artifacts and enchantments that hate on our graveyard. We could also even play like Cathar Commando, because that's also really good with, we could sacrifice it, blow up their Rest in Peace or their Tormod's Crypt, or make them use the Tormod's Crypt, and then we can play the God-Pharaoh's Gift, and then we can bring back the Cathar Commando again, which is pretty sweet. So just keep that in mind when you're playing this deck. Our opponents are going to bring in graveyard hate for us, and we need to be able to either counter those spells or we need to answer those spells. So just kind of keep that in mind with the deck overall. And then last thing we got to talk about is the budget options, which this deck is not very expensive. Most of the cost of the deck is just in the lands themselves, but if you wanted to go ahead and trim a card, I would recommend cutting Agent of Treachery. They go for about $6 a piece, so that kind of adds up relatively quickly. But really the only other way to cut costs on this deck is cutting the utility lands and the man lands, or not the man lands, but the dual lands like the Hengegate Pathway, and the Hallowed Fountain. Obviously, Temple of Enlightenment is extremely cheap, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you want to build this entire list as it is right now, it's only $150, which is pretty sweet. Definitely one of the cheaper decks, at least full lists I've ever done on the channel here. So just kind of keep that in mind if you're interested in building the deck. So that gets us to the end of the video. I'd like to thank everybody for watching this video. This is definitely a very fun list to build. Huge shout out to Lagfest for recommending we do a Reanimator deck on the channel here. So just let me know in the comment section below what you think about the deck. There was a lot of sweet creatures I unfortunately couldn't put in the deck. Is there a card that I should have included? Just let me know in the comment section below. So I'm Commander Crane. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.